In a small coastal village, nestled where the storms were fierce and gossip echoed louder than the ocean waves, lived a humble fisherman named Tariq and his teenage daughter, Leela. Life was simple, woven with the rhythms of the tide and the scent of salt in the air. Their days were spent mending nets and their nights were spent on the water. Every single evening, before setting sail into the vast, dark expanse, they performed a small ritual. Tariq would light a simple, old lantern, its glass weathered by years of sea spray, and place it carefully at the bow of their boat. The flame, small yet determined, would dance against the coming night. This small act didn't go unnoticed. The village, a tapestry of opinions, had its own stories about the lantern. Some whispered with a sense of wonder, "That light, it's Tariq's luck. It has a magic that guides lost ships back to the safety of our harbor." They saw it as a beacon of hope, a charm against the unpredictable sea. But where there is reverence, there is often ridicule. Others, more pragmatic and perhaps more cynical, would laugh openly. A tiny lantern against a raging storm? What utter foolishness! They'd scoff, their voices laced with mockery. He's just asking for trouble, lighting himself up like a target for the sea's fury. Through all the whispers and the jeers, Tariq remained serene. A quiet, knowing smile would play on his lips as he'd calmly reply, his voice as steady as the northern star, "This light isn't for luck. It's for those who are still out there, searching for their way home." His words held a depth the villagers couldn't quite grasp, a purpose that went far beyond superstition. It was a promise, a quiet declaration of his own unwavering principle. One evening, the sky began to brood. The usual gentle blues and soft greys of twilight were swallowed by an ominous, swirling darkness. The clouds gathered like a great, angry beast, their bellies heavy with unshed fury. A palpable tension settled over the village as the first gusts of wind began to whip through the narrow streets, carrying the roar of the sea with them. The waves, once a gentle lullaby, now crashed against the shore like thunderous war drums. The villagers hurried to the docks, their faces etched with alarm, shouting over the growing gale, "Tariq, don't be a fool! Turn back! The storm will swallow you whole." Their voices were a chorus of fear, a desperate plea for him to choose safety over his nightly ritual. "No catch is worth your life," another yelled. But Tariq, standing on the deck of his small, rocking boat, didn't look at the panicked crowd. Instead, his gaze found his daughter, Leela. Her young face was a mixture of fear and trust. He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder and said, his voice a calm anchor in the rising storm, "Sometimes, my dear, the sea is at its wildest right before it finds its calm. And sometimes, someone out there needs our light the most when the world is at its darkest." And so, with that quiet resolve, they sailed out. The tiny lantern flickered bravely, a single point of defiant light against the overwhelming darkness. The wind screamed around them, tearing at the sails, but Tariq and Leela were guided not by the fickle winds of fear, but by the steady compass of their own quiet purpose, a silent commitment to the unseen souls lost in the storm. By the next morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind a bruised sky and an eerily calm sea. But Tariq's boat was nowhere to be seen. The empty horizon spoke 1,000 silent, terrifying words. Word of their absence spread through the village like wildfire, fanned by the winds of speculation and grim certainty. The same voices that had warned him were now the first to condemn him. "See, we told him so," some said, a note of grim satisfaction in their tone. "The fool defied the storm, and now he's gone. The sea has claimed him." Others murmured with a shake of their heads, "He ignored everyone's warnings. It was his pride that drowned him, not the waves." The whispers painted a picture of a man whose stubbornness had led to his demise. Days bled into one another. The sea remained vast, empty, and silent, holding its secrets close. The village began to move on, accepting Tariq and Lila's fate as a tragic, but predictable story. But Leela refused to let go. Every single night, as dusk settled, she would walk to the end of the wooden dock, clutching another lantern. She'd light it, its flame a mirror of the one her father had carried, and she would stand there for hours, her small figure silhouetted against the twilight, watching the endless waves. She became a fixture of the shoreline, a living vigil. The villagers' pity soon turned to mockery. "Let it go, girl," they'd say, their words meant to be kind but landing like stones. You're just torturing yourself. The sea keeps what it takes." But Leela, deaf to their doubts, would only whisper into the wind, her voice a fragile yet unbreakable thread of hope. "My father's light will always find its way home." On the fourth night, a sliver of moon finally broke through the heavy cloud cover, casting a pale, silver path across the water. As Leela stood her watch, her eyes straining into the deep darkness, she saw it, a faint, almost imperceptible flicker on the distant horizon. It wasn't lightning. It wasn't a star. It was a lantern. Her heart leaped into her throat. Hope, fierce and sudden, flooded her veins. She began to run, her bare feet pounding against the wooden planks of the dock. And then, slowly, materializing out of the pre-dawn mist, came the familiar silhouette of her father's small boat. It was battered and broken, its sail torn, soaked through and barely afloat, but it was there. Inside, her father sat, exhausted but resolute, and with him were two other sailors, their faces pale and their bodies weak, but they were alive. Tariq managed a faint, tired smile as the boat drifted to the dock. "I found them," he said, his voice raspy. "Their ship went under in the storm. They were drifting. If I had listened to fear, they would have vanished forever." The next morning, the village square was buzzing. The very same people who had called Tariq a fool, who had gossiped about his pride, now gathered around him with awestruck faces. "A hero," they declared, their voices filled with admiration. "Such courage! We never doubted you." They slapped him on the back and praised his bravery, their words a stark contrast to the ones they had spoken just days before. But Tariq didn't smile or puff up his chest. He looked at the crowd, his expression unreadable, and quietly replied, "Yesterday, you called me a fool. Today, you call me a hero. I am neither. I only did what I believed was right." His quiet words cut through their boisterous praise, leaving an awkward silence in their wake. Later that day, as they mended the boat, Leela looked up at her father, her young mind grappling with the villagers' sudden change of heart. "Father," she asked, "why do people change their words so quickly?" Tariq paused his work and picked up the battered lantern from the dock. He smiled gently at his daughter, his eyes full of a deep, quiet wisdom. "Because," he explained, "their hearts move with the wind, shifting with every new current of opinion or outcome. But ours, Leela, ours must stay with the light." He placed the lantern back on the dock, and even in the bright morning sun, its small, steady flames seemed to glow with a special kind of strength. From that day forward, whenever a storm gathered on the horizon, the villagers would see a single lantern glowing by the shore. They no longer saw it as a foolish superstition or a reckless act of defiance. They saw it for what it truly was, a quiet, powerful reminder. A reminder that doing what is right isn't about seeking approval or avoiding criticism. It's about following the steady, unwavering light of your own truth, especially when it feels like you're standing all alone. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more stories that inspire. Stay true to your light.